That's saxophonist Jason Hainsworth from a release entitled Third Ward Stories. And pleased to welcome Jason Hainsworth to KCCK. Hi, Jason.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
In the company of Aaron Ottmar, who is the band director at City High. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you both here on the air. And Jason, I know you are fresh off the plane, and right after we're done here, you're headed right to a clinic. So Aaron is putting you to work right away.
I'm used to it. I dig it.
Well, we'll talk about what's going on with the Jazz Showcase in a little bit. But Jason, so you're a saxophone professor, and you with jazz studies, and I noticed roots music and American music at the San Francisco Conservatory. You were born in Texas and went to college for undergrad, at least in New Orleans. So let's I kind of want to start there.
Okay.
Because you studied there, of course, with the great Ellis Marsalis and Victor Goines, who I'm sure beat you up regularly as a saxophone player.
Yes, he did, and continues to do so, actually.
Tell me about how'd you land on that school after from Texas?
Well, I graduated. I was a product of the late '80s, early '90s, and naturally that was when Wynton Marsalis and Branford Marsalis and Ellis Marsalis were very prominent in just the jazz world itself. And I went to the High School for Performing and Visual Arts. And New Orleans is really only 6 hours away from Houston. So it was just a fortunate kind of thing. I was starting to figure out what I really wanted to do in terms of like a career, and I have no other skills other than to play the saxophone. So I just did some research, and I stumbled upon the University of New Orleans and had the opportunity to meet Mr. Marsalis, Ellis Marsalis, at an event that he was doing in Houston, and we began to talk, and I went and hung out with him for about 3 hours after this gig. He was very nice to me, and he told me that I couldn't play. But if I went to his school, that could change.
That's probably a pretty recruiting tool that he uses a lot.
Yes.
Would be my guess.
Yes, yeah. Yes. And there was no exaggeration. I couldn't. But in that event, I also met a very young Victor Goines, who basically I hadn't really heard of, but he's gone on to be like a very good mentor of mine and almost like a big brother to me. And I only stayed at that school for a year because things changed, and Mr. Goines joined Wynton's band, his septet, and so he actually ended up being my primary reason for staying there. And when he was leaving, I decided to leave, and I transferred to William Patterson University in New Jersey.
And it was there you got to know someone who's become a longtime collaborator and good friend, drummer Jonathan Blake.
Jonathan was still is one of my closest friends, and he's on the latest album that I've done. He's actually on another album that will never get released because it's really bad. But but we just shared a bunch of stories, and we listened to music together virtually every day for 4 years. And we played in groups together. We still do play in groups together. He's a brother of mine.
We last saw him in Iowa. He played with Tom Harrell's Pieces of a Dream in 2014 at the Iowa City Jazz Festival.
Okay.
And I told you off the air, I was fortunate enough to see him with Kurt Elling just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
In fact, and he's really one of the best. One of the best at what he does. So then as musicians do, you went to school, you did some grad work. Of course, you gigged, you did albums, and now you're at the San Francisco Conservatory. So tell me about the course of study there.
I teach currently at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. It's been, we just celebrated its centennial last year, but that meant that it was 100 years of not having jazz there. So we started a jazz program completely from scratch about 3 years ago.
What, really?
Yeah, and developed the curriculum for it, and handpicked every single student that comes in, and it's already one of the, I think anyway, one of the strongest jazz programs in the country. And we draw from students from all around the world. We have quite a few from the Midwest and, Cleveland and Chicago area. And yeah, it's been great so far. And we're in one of the best cities in the country, I think, and has a ton of jazz history behind it. There's been, Charles Mingus albums. There's been Miles Davis live at the Black Hawk from there. Thelonious Monk live in San Francisco. Just there's some Dave Brubeck albums. There's some Dexter Gordon albums live at the Keystone. So that was one thing that drew me from my previous teaching gig in Florida. There was just all of the cultural history behind it, and they still support live music of any kind, but jazz in particular, because we have SF Jazz.
The SF Jazz Collective, yeah.
And they are partners with our jazz program. So many of the faculty and, many of the members of the collective, such as Warren Wolf and Matt Brewer and Edward Simon, they are faculty members at my school. And I am the director of the jazz program there.
And your title on the conservatory website is Director of Roots, Jazz, and American Music.
Right.
So Director of the Jazz Program. How about, they gave you that triple title. Tell me, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's an interesting thing. We try to be as open-minded and as broad-based as we possibly can, while still having a strong foundation in America's music. And what that entails is that the students themselves have the luxury of going in various directions that they choose, just so long as they can do the jazz thing as well. And because of that, we have, all of our students are composers and arrangers, and their influences and their styles are, they run from anywhere from Stevie Wonder or, James P. Johnson to the latest jazz musician Ambrose or Matt Wilson or even the SF Jazz Collective. So we try to nurture all of those influences as it pertains to each student, and let them figure out a course for themselves, just so long as they know kind of what the foundation of all this stuff is from.
That's got to be both the joy and the difficulty, is meeting the students where they are in terms of their music.
Yeah, and I think that's just the joy in teaching anyway. I would say Aaron is doing the same thing at the high school level. We meet every student at their level, and we try to get them to a different level, whatever level that may be.
So you'll be working with high school students at City High in a very, intense, kind of short clinic time. So, what are you trying to accomplish in, when you come in, and the time is honestly it's fairly brief, so you're only going to have time to knock down a few things. But what are you working on? What do you hope the students take away from your time with them?
Really, I just broadly, I want them to take away my enthusiasm for the music. I think that's probably the most important thing. The notes will figure themselves out, and even if there are some wrong notes or some wrong rhythms, that's not the end of the world. It's actually the beauty of jazz music, just in general. But one thing that is difficult to capture is individual passion for an art form. So I hope that I can convey that I'm doing this and I'm traveling all the time, not to make Jeff Bezos type money, because that's not going to happen. But
I'm sorry, you picked the wrong line of work, Jason.
30 years. Yeah. But they can see that I'm genuinely doing this because, one, it's fun. I love hearing young jazz musicians. And I like playing with people of all levels, as long as they are enjoying it themselves.
I had a chance to hear Aaron, the City High Jazz Band, with the Corridor Jazz Project when we recorded those sessions just a few years ago, or a few weeks ago. And you do have a group of students who are very dedicated and interested in the music. For those who haven't been to the Jazz Showcase, tell us how the evening will progress.
Yeah, so our parents, actually tomorrow night we deck out our cafeteria into a jazz club night scene, which is really, really awesome, and doesn't even look like a cafeteria. You can think of any cafeteria, right? And just like you walk in there, you don't even realize it's a cafeteria. We have 2 shows, and so we share with our junior high feeder program. So we have the 7th and 8th grade jazz bands from Southeast Junior High that play on separate shows, and then we have all 4 of our jazz bands that play in separate shows as well between both those shows. And then we'll also be featuring the Corridor Quintet, which will have a busy weekend because they'll also be playing the first Friday concert series at the Opus Concert Cafe on Friday. But it's a great time. We provide refreshments, so on and so forth. And it's just cool to see the progression of jazz from 7th grade up until 12th grade, and including some high school students that are very, very advanced in what they do and already are getting gigs, in addition to obviously with us as our guest artist.
That's right. Matter of fact, I had somebody come up to me yesterday and say, "I think I want to hire the Corridor Quintet to play at my event," which
awesome.
is coming up.
Very cool.
Yeah, so they are making a name for themselves and getting gigs. And 3 of the 5 are your students at City High. Now, having heard what Jason said about what he hopes to accomplish in his time with your students, I'm sure that you're going to say, "I hope they get some of the notes."
Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna probably add to that. But what do you when you bring in a guest artist, what are you after for the program and for your students? What do you hope they take away from it?
To be honest, it's kind of one and the same. I think with students, especially for our jazz program, it's all extracurricular. Nothing happens during the school day. So just the fact that these kids are wanting to put in so much time and effort into developing, their musicianship for an art form that is, true to America. I think it's really, really special for them to have that enthusiasm and have that energy behind wanting to develop as a jazz musician. And my hope, too, is, experiences like this, as quick as they may be, that they have those in their memory. And that they keep music as a part of their lives, no matter where life may take them. Obviously, as a band director, it's cool to see them keep playing with music, but my biggest thing in the long run is that they just keep music as a part of their lives, whether they're listening to it, playing it, appreciating it, supporting it, whatever they're doing later on in life, just to keep that with them, because I think it's very special.
We often say the same thing here at KCCK. So you, in addition to, like I said, I got to hear your band when we recorded for the Corridor Jazz Sessions, but you also appeared as a guest artist with the Lisbon.
Yes, I did.
Band. So now, having been the guest artist,
yep.
Does that change a little bit, or is it giving you more ideas when you invite somebody like Jason to come into the program?
It does, because for a brief moment, I can take the director hat off, and I can kind of think from a different perspective, listen for different things too. And it can be kind of tricky too, because you're working with students you don't really know, and you won't really get a whole lot of opportunities to get to know them that well, like your own students. So finding different ways to approach maybe some concepts that are very familiar with your own students, but applying it in a fun and energetic and enthusiastic way with different students too.
So he's been a guest artist. Now he's going to be extra hard on you.
Oh, no
Jason.
pressure.
I don't know about that.
Well, it's been a great pleasure having you both here. If people are interested in coming to the Jazz Showcase, do you recommend tickets in advance?
Yes, absolutely. So you can contact City High School. The number is 319-688-1040, and just ask for information about the Jazz Showcase.
Okay, all right. Well, I know you're off to do a clinic yet this afternoon, and I'm sure you're going to be clinicking all day tomorrow and everything to get ready for the concerts on Saturday. So I just thank you both for being here, and welcome to Iowa. Jason, is this your first time in Iowa?
My first time.
All right. Well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
We actually have some sunshine.
Yes.
For you as well, which has been a little rare lately. So thanks again, and have fun this weekend.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dennis.
So again, City High Jazz Showcase. Contact City High if you'd like tickets for either of the 2 shows.